Welcome everyone to the 6th round post-fight show with me, Zane Simon, and I am bringing in a new co-host. Well, he's been on the 6th round before, but not with me, so it's all new to me. Nick Baldwin joining me for this 6th round post-fight show of the TUF 26 finale. And first off, ton of finishes, all leading up into the last three fights, which were all still fun fights. Still not the most fun card in the world. Like, a good card. I'm not gonna downgrade. I'm not gonna talk trash on it, because if you're gonna have a bunch of bad fighters, then them all getting finishes is absolutely the best possible way to go. But a card hampered by a low level of technique and FS1 pacing.
Yes. Well, firstly, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. And yeah, you're sort of bang on. I mean, we had a lot of finishes, but this whole card really came down to, did you watch The Ultimate Fighter 26? If you did, you are sort of invested in a fight like, Robertson and Whitmire. And for me, I didn't watch a single episode of Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if you did or not, but a lot of these I just didn't know much about. I didn't care. There's really no investment. And even though we saw a lot of first round arm bars and some good fights, some strange fights, some overall strange happenings. I mean, a lot of it just didn't matter because so much of this is low level. And when we see so many arm bars, which I think might have tied the record for most on our card in modern history of the UFC, you got to wonder, that's just more sloppy defense from these sort of inexperienced fighters from TUF. And it's not like we're seeing super high level finishes. We're seeing good finishes. I mean, it all counts as better than a bore fest. But you got to think about the fact that, hey, are we really watching super high level MMA? And if not, should we care? Do we consider this a good card? It's tough.
A counterpoint, devil's advocate point to that, and it's a reasonable counterpoint to that, is that somebody else reached out to me while I was doing the live Twitter thing, and they were like, I'm getting people who don't follow this sport very much, but like maybe watched a little bit of TUF, or just and got invested for that, or got invested for one other reason or another just to watch this card, like super casual fans. They were telling him like, oh man, this is awesome. Like, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Like, this is so much fun and this is so cool. And so, people who don't really care how sloppy a fight is, seem
This
like
is a
they have a lot of
dream
fun.
card. Yeah.
Yeah. So to that degree, coming off of TUF, which is really just kind of a casual fan entryway anyway. I mean, there are hardcore TUF fans out there, I know, and God bless you, but I can't see being a hardcore MMA fan and being excited for a 26th season of The Ultimate Fighter. It's supposed to be a way for people who don't watch a lot of MMA. They get all this context, all these stories, they get invested in stuff like that. And so I do think that for people who came in on the back of that, this was a very solid card for them.
And I think a lot of casual fans that see the Ultimate Fighter like every half year or so, they see it on FS1 and they know of it because of how popular it once was, but maybe they never made the transition to the UFC and became a hardcore fan like us. So yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, TUF definitely is mostly watched by casual fans, and some pick up on the UFC, some don't.
Yeah, and nobody in the end, not many people are watching this card, so it is what it is. It's not like any major win or loss either way for the UFC, because nobody's going to be watching the TUF finale.
We have UFC 218 tomorrow. I think the focus is on that.
So then going top to bottom, starting off with the title fight to end the night, Nico Montano beating Roxanne Modafferi by unanimous decision, mostly just kind of outpointing her, as Modafferi honestly did probably land the closer shots and submissions to finishing the fight, but Montano eating her up with a lot of volume. Really, the first question that I have to ask is, what the hell does UFC do with a champion like Nico Montano? Like, how do they give her a title defense now?
Well, I mean, I think this, I kind of hate to say it just because we're gonna. I think though when 3 years down the road, we're going to be looking at this as just sort of a UFC title reign that had no meaning almost. It's going to be like Carlos Esparza as the first UFC strawweight champion. I would be surprised. I mean, I don't know. I would think they give her Shevchenko. I mean, that sort of makes sense. Although Shevchenko coming off loss, maybe they probably want Shevchenko to get one win at 125 before fighting for the title, and then. But then, who do you give Montano? Do you give her Lauren Murphy? Do you run Eubanks back? Probably not. That's a risk because of the weight cutting issues. Like this is deeper than featherweight in the UFC right now, women's featherweight, but there's not a clear option.
I mean,
Shevchenko's the best fight.
Weight too, frankly, but that's a whole other criticism. Anyway,
long term, I think Shevchenko reigns over the division, probably. Assuming all goes to plan, she still makes the drop down, and I think eventually Joanna finds her way at 125. Even if she doesn't win back the title, assuming she gets an immediate rematch with Naomi Yunus, she doesn't want to cut that weight for the rest of her career, so she'll find a way up to 125. She'll be right up there. Valentina probably will. And I think those are going to be the fighters at the top for long-term purposes. But right now, I guess Montano can enjoy the spotlight because I don't think she'll be in it for too long, if I'm going to be honest.
Well, yeah, I don't see – unless they just match her up with somebody else off of TUF. Unless they give
just like Lauren Murphy, yeah.
Or they give her Murphy where she could have a potential defense that she might win. I mean, Shevchenko is going to be gunning for a title shot, and even off a loss, she's got every claim to get one.
Yeah. Paige Van Zandt, if she beats Jessica Rose Clark in January, they could give it to her just because it's Paige Van Zandt.
Yeah, and Montano might win that fight. Maybe not.
It's actually kind of competitive. Yeah,
it'd be competitive. Paige Van Zandt is probably the better athlete, but has not shown a lot of the connective pieces to a good MMA game. On the flip side, kind of sucks for Roxy. She got, like I say, she had the best in terms of like actual damage and submissions and all that. She had the best moments of the fight, but she just couldn't make it count towards winning a round. Like if you don't actually get somebody close to tapping, or if you don't get somebody actually, you don't drop your opponent or hurt them badly enough that it looks like you're about to finish the fight, then the judges can't give you that much weight for landing these slightly better shots.
She wasn't consistent enough. I feel like she almost probably had some of the bigger moments compared to Montano, but Montano was just way more fluid on the feet. And I hate using that word just because it feels like the commentators, that's all they were saying. But, it's true. She seemed to be quite a better striker. She had the volume on the feet, and that's what won her the fight. Roxy, had the submission attempts here and there. She had a few hard shots, but they weren't, a few in round one, a few in round two, and so on. They were here and there, very sporadic, and that's not going to win you a 5-round fight.
Yeah. Before that co-main event, Sean O'Malley beats Terrion Ware, and I gotta say that fight was going just about like I feared it would go for Sean O'Malley. Came out like a house on fire, looking amazing, and then gassed out and started getting tuned up. And I came away really impressed with O'Malley. Like for him to dig deep, come out in round 3 and put out the more volume, land the better strikes, hit the takedowns, keep fighting hard. It was a great show of heart for him.
Yeah, I was impressed with O'Malley. Like in that first round, after that first round, I saw a lot of tweets thinking, hey, yeah, and even myself, I was thinking, because I tweeted just before the fight started, maybe don't hop on the bandwagon just yet. Like, I didn't even realize this guy was so hyped up going into this fight until like this week, because I knew he had a great showing on Contender Series. I know he smoked the the marijuana with with Snoop Dogg, and got that sort of side fame on Snoop's social media, and I knew sort of looked not like a fighter, and he, a little outspoken, and Dana loved him. And so the hype was understandable, but I didn't realize it. Like, I didn't feel like people were actually talking about him until, just the other day. But if he was fair, I don't think it's necessarily deserved, but, moving forward, by all means, I still don't think, maybe don't quite hop on that bandwagon because he still has holes in his game. He needs to fix that cardio. I was really surprised that he looked good in the, and fresh in that third round. Like he really went after it and did good things against Ware in that third round. Where if you were telling me, in that second round, does Ware win that third round or does O'Malley? I'm thinking Ware all day. Like I was prepared for a Ware 29-28, pretty clear unanimous decision victory, but no, O'Malley turned it up late. And the guy is super creative in there, and he looked really, really composed, very comfortable for his UFC debut. I think that's key here. Where he's comfortable, but he's been there before already. This was his second fight. O'Malley though, for 23-24, I think, super composed in there. That'll take him big places. He, technical striking, very unorthodox style, good footwork. I think the future is pretty bright for this kid.
Yeah, I do too. I like what I saw, and I'm still worried because being another Alex Caceres just has me worried. The Alex Caceres style has not resulted in a consistent career for the original Alex Caceres, but having a lot of power with that style definitely helps a lot, and seems like it is making up for a lot of the more stylistic funk that is in Alex Caceres' own game.
Yeah, it's more speculation than anything, but I think he does better in the UFC overall long term than Caceres. I think, he could just end up being an action fighter that doesn't quite crack that top 10, top 15, but, he's young, and he just has that star potential. And I hate saying that this soon, but I kind of see it in him. I got to be honest. He needs to fix some things up. Defense, obviously, is major here because it's expected that his defense wouldn't be great. He's undefeated, young, so he'll get better with that. But the striking's there. He showed off a takedown here and there. I think this guy is a bit, as I said, I think the guy has potential.
Yeah, and he's at least got the UFC marketing machine behind him early on, which happens very, very rarely. So they're probably going to try and be a bit careful with what they do with him.
And if he does come up short and not go as far as we thought, he's going to be an action fighter in the bantamweight division. Who can't complain.
Before that, Lauren Murphy beat Barb Honchak by split decision. I honestly scored that fight for Honchak. I thought her submission work in the third round was enough to take that round, and then they split the first two rounds. But I got no real problem with seeing Murphy win it, and it was a good emotional moment to see Murphy get a tough, close split decision win, which has classically gone against her in the UFC.
Yeah, good fight overall. Good performances from both fighters. I wasn't sure this was going to be nearly as exciting. I thought it was going to be one of the lower moments of the card. I was definitely wrong. Especially just a couple fights after that Bennett Fabian fight we'll get to later. Definitely woke us up a little bit, and the last couple fights did as well. Got to give it to Lauren Murphy. She. I scored the fight for Honchak, but I still feel, something inside me feels like Murphy deserves this just because, as you said, it seems like all these split decisions don't go her way. The first two fights of her UFC career, I thought she won. She lost both by split decision. So kind of got to feel, kind of okay, kind of good for Murphy just because she's in the winning column, and I feel that's where she should be in the UFC more often than she really is. But yeah, overall the fight, good grappling exchanges late. On the feet, it was a very competitive fight. Overall, very close, and you can't complain about the scorecards, really. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the best, most complete performance Murphy has put on, win or lose.
Yeah.
I guess other than her TKO win she had over a pretty brutally overmatched Kelly Fashels. But otherwise, it's her most complete UFC performance where she actually looked like she was willing to throw volume standing, be aggressive, look for her takedowns, things that in the past have been a huge problem where she's often just stalked forward into the clinch without any clear idea of what to do and hung out, getting chewed up a bit. So it was a good fight for her, and she came away with the good decision for it. So really, I don't think that she's going to be getting a title shot off of it. I don't think she talked about. I mean, I don't even know if after that fight she was talking about like, oh, I get a title shot. I deserve a title shot right now, or just like as a goal, that's still what I want and still what I'm going for. any way you slice it, I think the UFC would set up just about any other fight, like, you know, Paige Van Zant or some other, even like somebody like Jessica I or something, or some other random
I just
person.
remember that Murphy lost to Nico on TUF. So yeah, if that fight didn't happen, I think she has a bigger case because she beat a semifinalist, and if they're going by the TUF, the how the tournament played out, kind of makes sense from that perspective, but. Still, because she was short notice replacement. She wasn't supposed to fight Honchak. She was supposed to fight someone else in the tournament or no, she was actually supposed to fight a newcomer who wasn't part of TUF
Yeah, Priscilla
on the
Cachoeira.
undercard, right? And so, yeah, she's not going to get the title shot. I think more so than anything, just because she's fought Montano before.
I think it's just because she's ratings death, and the UFC is trying to make that division fun and immediately catch people, and it's just never going to be, you know. It's the same reason that Damian Maia had to fight for like 2 years and 20 fights to get back to a title shot, and then it was the most awful thing to watch. You know,
Yeah.
there are certain fights that the UFC is just not that eager to put together.
No, because Montano versus Murphy, like that would do terrible. I mean, it'd be like
Yeah.
a co-main event somewhere or fight night, but still, no.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be anything that would get anybody excited. Before that, Gerald Meerschaert beat Eric Spicely with a huge body kick KO. Honestly, a pretty impressive performance from Meerschaert, given how badly the fight kind of started for him in the first round.
Well, it actually started really good, but then like a minute later, it was, is Mercer going to get choked out? He might just get choked out, but no, he survived. So basically, as you said, he started lighting up Eric Spicely on the feet super early on, landing good combinations, putting his punches together, going a bit wild, honestly, but Spicely hung tough and ultimately and found his way to the mat and got a pretty quick takedown on Meerschaert. I know that's one of Meerschaert's biggest, not maybe I guess a flaw. I mean, he doesn't have very good takedown defense. That showed. I mean, I picked Meerschaert going in, but I was not confident whatsoever. I did my own preview show, and both Jed and Wes, who I do the show with, picked Spicely. So that didn't make me much more confident in Meerschaert. But yeah, I guess as I think most people saw going in, this was a tale of two fights. If Meerschaert's on the feet, he's winning. If it's on the ground, Spicely is in control, probably almost choking Meerschaert out. And that's basically the case here. Meerschaert was able to survive. Second round started on the feet, and he was able to land a huge body kick that just shut Spicely down. His body sort of just caved in. I guess it would have been a liver shot. Super painful, obviously. So, yeah, that, pretty straightforward. I mean, Meerschaert did pretty well on the feet. Spicely did really great on the ground, but just came down to where it played out.
Well, the unfortunate thing for Spicely is really kind of at his level of athleticism. If he's not using the one opportunity he gets per fight to win, probably not winning that fight.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Especially his style of striking and especially style of striking defense, where he just kind of puts his hands up and just lets you wail away until you get tired. As was shown pretty clearly in this fight, it leaves some big openings for people to exploit, and he had, he got Meerschaert down. He had to make the best of that and couldn't, and it's too bad because he seems like a fun, interesting guy, but it's probably going to be hard for him to make a lot of moves in the UFC beyond what he's already had. He got 2 wins that kind of surprised a lot of people, and now that everybody kind of knows what the score is, it's probably going to get only tougher for him to find those wins again.
Well, and to your point, looking at the Thiago Santos win, the huge upset last year, if he hadn't capitalized the way he did and choked out Santos at that very moment, it would have just gotten tougher. If Santos had survived like Meerschaert did, going to the second round, Santos is expecting it now. He already should have been, but more so. And there's a good chance Spicely wouldn't have gotten him down again and gone that submission. So yeah, same thing here basically.
Before that, Deanna Bennett drew Melinda Fabian, and man, I feel a bit like Fabian got robbed on that one.
I scored it a draw, but I can't say I watched this as close as some of the other fights. I mean, it was not a very good fight whatsoever. Apparently, I think it was better than Bellator's main event, Julia Budd and Blenko. That I didn't watch it, but heard that was a bad call and a bad fight. But yeah, I was expecting a lot more out of Bennett. Fabian, though, to her credit, did a lot better, on the flip side than I
Yeah.
thought she would. She was one of the bigger underdogs on the card, so props to her. Drawing with a big favorite like Deanna Bennett, who's always been one of the better, flyweights in Invicta just in general. Yeah, props to her, but not a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, Fabian, to her credit, she really did not. She looked like a much better fighter than she ever had before. And to the point that I think Bennett just realized, I'm not going to strike with this woman at all. Slog. But Bennett getting awarded for mostly control. I mean, I don't know. Okay, here's the biggest thing. How do you feel about Fabian getting taken a point taken for her first fence grab of the fight? Because I know a lot of us, myself included, are of the feeling that fighters should be penalized a lot more often for fouls.
Yeah.
But it does make Fabian like one of the only fighters in UFC history to get a point taken for a single fence grab.
And that's where it gets tricky. They before just all of a sudden, one referee here and there taking away a point from a foul the first time without a warning. They need to literally come out and say that on the record publicly. As of January 1st of 2018, we are going to start taking away points on a first foul and not give warnings anymore. But for one referee out of like a handful just to do it on occasion, like Big John doesn't do it every time, far from it.
No.
Herb Dean doesn't do it all the time. Mark Goddard just talked about in an article on MMA Fighting why they're reluctant to take away points in many situations. So I'm of the opinion that points should be taken away first time and much more in general, but they can't just do it whenever they want, and that happens way too much for anything in MMA.
Yeah, it's a weird point. I feel overall that Fabian just kind of got the shit end of the stick on that fight in general. But I'm sure that of the two of them, she seems like she's more likely to come out and do well in another action fight. Bennett, that was a really bad showing for her, so she's got a lot to prove next time out if she gets another UFC bout. Before that, Brett Johns beat Joe Soto with a calf slicer in 30 seconds. I don't think anybody in their right mind called that.
Never mind call it, but saw it. Like I think I was looking at my computer, writing something on Twitter, of course, as it happened, looked up and Brett Johns is on the cage or celebrating. Incredible win. Like I mean, Brett Johns was a favorite. I think that made sense. I think Soto had a good chance on paper. Definitely. I think a lot of people will walk away thinking, oh, Soto was just blown out of the water. And yeah, he was, but I mean, a calf slicer, that was the second one in UFC history. So it's like, if that doesn't happen, and usually it wouldn't, I think Soto makes this a tougher fight for Johns, but Johns super slick, set it up very well. And Soto had no other option but to tap. And it's even more incredible because Soto is a very high grappler himself. Like he's really tricky on the mat. And so it's not like a lot of the submissions, armbar specifically, we saw earlier, where you have to wonder, would that have happened against a higher level fighter? In this case, it's really tough to tap out Joe Soto. And so for Brett Johns to do it with a calf slicer in 30 seconds, that's unbelievable.
Yep, it's only the second time in his career that Joe Soto has been submitted. Of course, the first one is a guillotine to Eddie Ogden, which also that's not really a submission loss to Soto's credit, but this is definitely. I mean, it's good to see from Johns because Johns is a bit of a reputation of being he's a great round winner.
Yeah,
a really exciting fight winner. Seeing him actually, get an exciting finish in there kind of gives the feeling that he could be a more interesting contender down the road as he continues on.
And I think ultimately this was a good for the UFC, just because I think Brett Johns has more upside. He's from Welsh, or he is Welsh. He has the undefeated record. Soto, he's had his fair share of losses. He's a good fighter by himself,
He
but
had his title
John.
shot after all.
Exactly. And I mean, is he ever going to get another one? No. So I mean, Brett Johns, I hate saying, predicting whether a guy's going to crack the top 5 or fight for a title, but I think Johns can go pretty far in this division. I know bantamweight is more stacked than it's probably ever been right now, but Johns could be a name in the division. He has really good top control. His grappling clearly is very good as well. Striking is getting better. He's pretty well rounded, and so I think this was good for the UFC. Good, great performance, and I think the guy has a lot of upside.
Yeah, he needs to add some more wrinkles to his game from what I've seen, but he's only 25, so it's good to see him. If one of those wrinkles is some crazy submissions, then that's great to see.
And I was just going to say real quick, and as long, his weight seems to be okay, because I know I remember the first time I had known of him, he was stripped of his Titan FC title for missing weight as the champion, and so he seems to have gotten that in order, so that's good as well.
All right. Before that, Montana De La Rosa, Christina Marks, Montana De La Rosa with an arm bar. Marks was kind of handing De La Rosa her ass up until that point, but just dropped right into an arm bar, basically. Just leapt into guard, let her arm get snatched up, and that's it. Pretty sloppy fight. Not much to say about it.
Yeah, and so the streak, other than Sanchez, Jane, so the streak of these probably lower level submissions begin. Nothing really much to add. Marks seemed to be doing all right, but got caught on the ground like a lot of these fighters tonight. De La Rosa with the win. Decent performance.
For that, though, Ryan James beat Andrew Sanchez. And man, I knew going in that there was a chance this could happen. A glimmer of a chance. But I did not think it would be to Ryan James. If you had to ask me, is Ryan James good enough that if Andrew Sanchez gasses out, Ryan James can take over and knock him out? I would not. I just would have said no. No, he's not good enough for that. But man, did Andrew Sanchez gas out way harder than I thought he could.
Well, and probably more than Smith fight. I mean, I'd have to go back and watch, but I would think so. Just
he gassed out memory. He was at Kimbo Slice versus
Dada.
No, well, maybe, but I was thinking more of his fight with what's his name that he had in the UFC. The Kimbo Slice bent over, gasping for breath gif of MMA lore. Houston Alexander.
Okay.
Kimbo Slice versus Houston Alexander, where they were both just hands on knees, bent over in the cage, looking at each other, huffing. He was near that level.
Yeah, this is it's pretty ridiculous when you're fighting in the UFC at the highest level. I know, and he won the Ultimate Fighter. So I mean, it's not like he is a complete bum or whatever that is here in the UFC for 2 fights and gone and never to be seen or heard of ever again. The guy did good things on the Ultimate Fighter. He started out his UFC career pretty well, I think, racking up a couple wins at the very least. But man, there are no excuses to be fighting at the highest level and to have this bad cardio. I understand if he definitely went for it against Ryan James. He had James basically out. James was hurt. I don't care what he says in his post-fight interview. James was hurt badly, and saved by the bell.
Well, he says he's not hurt because he literally does not remember that part of his life. There were 10 minutes totally gone from Ryan James' life. He doesn't know.
Yeah, that's true. When he watches back, he'll hop on Twitter and say, "Yeah, I was a little hurt." But yeah, so he definitely emptied the gas tank. Sanchez did, in that big moment, in that big flurry. But even still, a fighter should be able to somewhat recover from that. Over time they get tired, but he was gassed. He was dead tired, and when you're exhausted when Ryan James starts to outpoint you on the feet and ends up knocking you out in the 3rd round. Ryan James is not a good striker. He's not a good fighter. It's honestly kind of crazy to think that he's a jiu-jitsu black belt just because like he doesn't he doesn't look to get the fight down and as nearly as much you would think almost. I know maybe the
Doesn't know how to
opportunities weren't there. Yeah. I guess, he has the submission capabilities, but it definitely takes it getting to the ground first. But yeah, like what a weird fight. Like if you were to tell me in between the first and second round that Ryan James would stop Andrew Sanchez in round 3 with strikes, and let me add that this was his first TKO knockout win in his pro career. And I don't know if he had an amateur career or not, but I would imagine his first ever. And so for it to come against kind of a top prospect or once top prospect in Andrew Sanchez, I would have called you dead wrong. But yeah, you would have been dead right. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Sanchez. I mean, I think the biggest thing is not even so much Sanchez's cardio is bad, although it's not great. So he just doesn't seem to realize what his cardio is, and he only does everything with a huge amount of power. So even gassed out, dead on his feet, he's just winging only huge power shots over and over, going for big power takedowns, just trying to thing as accentuated and driven and over the top as possible, and all of it just so obviously sucks energy out of him. And even in fights he's won, even going back to his fight with Trevor Smith, like really tired in that fight, and it's gonna be to figure out how to stop himself from just all of his energy on things that aren't immediately stopping the fight.
Well, I mean, I agree and disagree. I think like going after James the way he did was sort of, made sense because again, he had James badly hurt. Give him a few more seconds and he probably would have won. And so I can understand that. I can understand Sanchez's point of view, but I still sort of
in that instance, in the moment, you can understand that. But then if you look at his whole history of like bad cardio management,
yeah, if it starts to become a trend, then
yeah, it's a trend. So in the individual moment, it's somewhat understandable, but as part of a whole trend, it's a big problem.
And maybe in this fight, it wasn't as bad as say last fight of this fight before, but in general, if he does it, then yeah, he needs to fix that. And
before that, Rachel Ostovich beat Karin Gavorjian. The read on this fight was honestly that Gavorjian is just too wild to keep herself from getting submitted, and that is exactly what happened. She just got taken down, got up, and then decided that while Ostovich was clearly the better grappler, she should go for a takedown on Ostovich, and Ostovich just was happy to let herself get taken down and immediately jump on the armbar for the win.
It's not just being wild; it's also just having poor fight IQ.
Yeah, well, that's one and the same at that point.
Sure.
Yeah, not a lot to know other than that.
Just another one of those, as we said, kind of, low level submissions. Yep. The many of them.
And before that, Shayna Dobson beat Ariel Beck. This was actually a pretty good fight, pretty fun fight to watch. Beck looked like the busier, more composed fighter early on, but she didn't have Dobson's speed or power, and as the fight wore on, she started to get lit up. Mostly, Beck, I don't know if Beck knows where her head is on her body, because every time Dobson threw a head kick, she just ate it cold. And it's just like, you realize you actually need to like get your hands up and block that that kick incoming, and she ate like 5 of them in this fight.
Yeah, and it was a very weird stoppage, but I mean, it's hard to like exactly explain what happened. I know a lot of people are going to end up calling her like a quitter, and I don't know if that's fair, but it wasn't, an out cold knockout, or it was a bit weird. Maybe just a delay of reaction, honestly.
I think it was mostly a bit of a delayed reaction, but it definitely was all. It came, unfortunately for her, not that long after the commentary team was talking up her whole like farm strong, I've been kicked by mules, nobody can hurt you, you're not going to hurt me thing, and then she just kind of puts her hands up and crumples to the mat, and
yeah, the timing on that couldn't have been much worse.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate look in that. Uh, Before that, to kick off the card, Jillian Robertson with a armbar on Emily Whitmire. And honestly, for all of the funky nonsense arm bars of this card, Robertson's is the one that I feel like was the night, like the most technically decent and, you know, like felt like a reasonable submission lockup. Like it wasn't
Yeah,
just Whitmire being a bad grappler. It was a nice move from Robertson to get that armbar.
yeah, I agree. I don't think there's really much else to add. I didn't watch this live. I caught it when they showed it, I think,
Uh,
after the last FS1 fight, but yeah, a good submission.
like she was in a bad position, trapped up against the fence, and it looked like she was playing guard. And it's like you shouldn't be playing guard on your back up against the fence like that. And you know, she threw her legs up and turned really nicely and locked it up, and it was a quality win. And I liked what I saw of her as a prospect.
And I think it was an upset too, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of one, but
A
I
slight
mean,
one, yeah.
neither of these women have records deep enough that they should have been highly favored over one another.
Right. Yeah.
I did see Roberts. Like I watched most of the fights from Tough 26. I didn't actually just watch the actual show itself, but I like the look of her as a prospect on the show, and she's super young, and so it was good to see her get a quality win. And she's trained out of American Top Team, so what she can do down the road.
Yeah, training at ATT. I think she'll just get better.
Mm-hmm. Back to the top, you know, Montano, Modafferi, O'Malley Ware, Murphy Honchak, all fun fights. Mearshart Spicely had a good stoppage. Awful. But it's just like it's weird to watch a lot of really low level MMA broken up by FS1 pacing and then end up with like 3 decisions where you've still got like 10 minutes of filler between them all and all that. It wasn't a bad card for what it was. It was the best card it could have been given the level of fights they booked for it. To just mix that in with FS1 pacing.
Yeah, up until the last few fights, it was one of those cards where it's like I'm sitting on the couch, half watching, half not, just because it's it's not very good. A lot of it. I mean, some of it, as you said, it's kind of weird. Like I don't feel I'm giving the card enough credit. Like if you just break it down fight by fight, it's actually, as you said, it was good. You still, have to count the lower level submissions that we talked about. The last 3 fights were all great. Spicy Mershard, good finishes. You said the John's Soto, you don't see that every day. There were a few meh performances, actually, well, honestly, the only really terrible one was the Bennett's. And so yeah. I don't think you can't have one, spoiler sort of and make, call it a bad card. But the FS1 pacing seemed a lot worse for this one than usual. Yeah, I tweeted, I think at about 8 o'clock my time, this FS1 pacing is killing me and it's 8 o'clock. And,
yeah.
But
well, it was especially a problem for the Montana De La Rosa, or was it, let's see, what was the final prelim? Was it, the Montana De La Rosa, Christina Marks to Brett Johns, Joe Soto break, where
that's when they threw in the first fight.
De La Rosa got a submission in 2 minutes, and then if you were like me and watched the first fight live, it was like 35 minutes before they aired a new bout.
Yeah,
like
and the fact that next one lasted 30 seconds didn't help either.
Yeah. And then it's just like, you wait 35 minutes, then you get 30 seconds, and then it's like, well, we got another 20 minutes to wait now before they book the next fight comes out. So
we always complain when there's so many, decisions, and then we find ourselves complaining after all when there's a bunch of finishes because the pace.
Yeah, it's just for a good card, the best card this card could have been on paper. FS1 is always a killer, and that's really all there is to it.
If you're watching this on PVR, this was an okay card for what it was on paper.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap it up. You can find me on Twitter at @TheZaneSimon and follow you on Twitter at
Nick Baldwin MMA.
All right, Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com in our various roles, doing all our stuff. We will be back tomorrow. I will be doing live Twitter and then 6th round again with Eddie Mercado tomorrow, for UFC 218. So everybody stay tuned for that. Give this video a like. That's a thumbs up thing down there. That helps us a lot. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM, to get all the latest video shows, videos, news, analysis, all that stuff we do week in, week out. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.